making me. What's time at a thing they kill or keep a fire or lose their living? I gotta go faster, keep up the pace, just to stay in the human race. I could go supersonic, the problem's chronic. Tell me, does life exist beyond it? When I need to sate, I just accelerate into oblivion. Into oblivion.
Buenos nachos, amigos. Welcome to another fine episode of Record Breakers. I am PD Rave. Here with me, as always, is none other than my quorum of yahoos. We got Brett.
Yep, you sure do.
We got Drew.
Hey.
And we got Patrick.
What?
And of course, we have our special guest. Once again, it's that time again. We're going to have none other than Bill Meeks. Bill, how's it going?
I think it's going okay now that I have my pajamas up off the floor back here. We had some setup stuff going on at the beginning, but I think I'm clear. You know, whatever you guys do with this video, I can't be held at fault for anything. So yes. I'm excited.
All right. We're gathered once again to talk about music, and Bill is here as the provider of the album, as we do with our guests. They come in, share something with us, and you have a very interesting album, Bill. What is your album that you're providing us?
Well, it's a little-known recording artist. You might have heard of him, Raffi. No, I'm kidding.
Hey, baby beluga.
Ring, 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 ring. Banana phone.
Yes.
What do you think the baby beluga represents?
Yes.
No, it's by a little band bigger in the 90s than they are now, called Garbage, and it's their album, their second album, version 2.0. Makes sense, right? Yes. And it's also the first album I ever bought. So. Yeah. And if you're not familiar with Garbage, lead singer Shirley Manson, incredibly attractive, very talented Scottish woman. Duke Erickson on guitar and keyboard, Steve Marker on guitar, Daniel Schulman on bass, and Butch Vig on drums. And the thing about them is they're kind of a studio band where they write and they discover the songs in the studio. And especially with this album, they did a lot of production on it. Yeah. And I think that's actually, it was part of their rationale for calling the album version 2.0 was that it was so like in the computer that it felt like they thought it should have a computery name. But and it, like I said, you know, they do all the production stuff themselves, and they produce this album at Smart Studios in Wisconsin.
Yeah, Butch Vig is a producer extraordinaire for sure.
And he had big shoes to fill when Oscar the Grouch left the drum kit. You know, it was.
Yes. Brett, what were your expectations coming into this album? I know you're familiar.
I was there when it happened. I borrowed this CD from my friend Blaine Burkhart in 1997 while we traded PC Gamer demo CDs and played a lot of Duke Nukem. But I don't think I had revisited this since the late 90s. So I had to actually brush up on this. It wasn't like the Aquabats where I just closed my eyes and meditated for a minute and the album occurred in my head. I had to actually work at this one.
Yeah. Patrick, what expectations did you have coming into this album?
I too grew up on this sort of era of music, and I fondly remember many a Garbage song. I don't think I've ever listened to an album until now, but I certainly knew who Shirley Manson was and knew who they were and knew more than a few songs on this record. So I was excited.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what were your expectations coming into this album?
You know what? Oddly enough, I also listened to alternative radio in the 90s, and I also remember Garbage from that. I heard a lot of their singles, but for one reason or another, I never really dove into them. So I kind of knew the primer of what I was getting into, but not the breadth that I was getting into, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So yeah, and I'm similar to me. I remember it back in the day. I remember it even more than you guys because I'm a few years older than you guys. But yeah, I remember it back. Well, 1 year older than you.
Yeah,
Uh,
several.
Old contest.
Come on there, old man winners. You know, tell me to get off your lawn.
Yeah. Bill, what would be the themes and elements that you would point out about this album?
Well, first of all, it has this was really my introduction to anything like electronic music, and what they do is they take a lot of kind of the grammar of electronica and kind of mash it together with a lot more of organic sounds and a lot of sound effects and stuff just everywhere. It's a very noisy kind of album, but it has a lot of really strong pop hooks too, which they mentioned in an interview I read today in preparation for the episode. Beach Boys, Frank Sinatra being big influences on that side of it. But yeah, and it's really dirty and gritty. But I mean, it even has lighter tracks like When I Grow Up, which was on I think the Big Daddy soundtrack, right? Yeah. and she was flying around in like a spaceship or something like that. Yeah. But above all else, the lyrics are very dark and very sensual. I think that Shirley Manson's kind of stock in trade is that she has this kind of just like, her songwriting voice is sort of someone who, especially on this album, is someone who's just kind of come into a sexual awakening from a period of probably more traditional sort of sexual experiences and stuff. And it definitely comes through in the album. And there's also a lot sense of isolation and kind of insanity, madness, space madness to the album because she wrote a lot of it while she was staying in a hotel right by the studio, and she was also dealing with some bad management people and stuff like that. You can hear that in a couple songs. Paranoid and Medication are the ones that come to mind, specifically addressing that situation in her life. But, overall, dark, gritty, sensual, and very personal for Shirley Manson.
Yeah. I'll go with Brett. Brett, what would be the themes and elements that stood out for you?
Well, yeah, the lead singer pulled straight out of a Patrick Nagel painting. You get a little bit of that. Kids Google Patrick Nagel and Duran Duran. It was definitely, it had the synth, it had the synth drum, but in a way that it was the era where they were finding out how to layer things in a certain way. They still had not completely let go of the early years of the 90s and what was still, the meat and potatoes of the alternative recording industry was still going strong. But it definitely had a lot of songs about the boom boom, the love making.
Whoopee, as it were.
Yes, the whoopee.
Whoopee.
Yes,
that's what you get, folks, for making whoopee.
And
hey guys, that's like 6 jokes in a row. Don't push it, okay?
Hey. Everybody gets one. But it's an album that at its time, it got a lot of play. Even though the content of the album was not everything that you were presented on radio play, but it did do some things that before I heard this album I had never heard before.
Patrick, what would be the themes and elements that stood out for you?
So, constant throughout this album is Shirley Manson's voice, which I adore because it's haunting often and unique and just, I don't know, like it's one of those, like, it is the defining aspect of the band, and you can say everything about Butch Vig and his crazy mad production skills, but this band would have gone nowhere without her. Butch Big, he would have went everywhere. He would have went everywhere.
That's my rap name now.
Butch Big, yeah. But like her voice throughout this, and I as the last episode will say, I have a thing for electronic music in general, like, and a lot of this is sort of like the 90s alternative. Let's mix like, guitars and normal drums with electronic stuff. Kind of in the I feel like if Prodigy is the electronic side of that, Garbage is like the rock side of that sort of blending of electronics and live instruments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then they brought forth a couple. I think the sound that I think has been inspired and thrown forward through several mediums, and eventually I think born one of our favorite groups on this show, Love Extereo. You could definitely see. You could definitely see that influence when you see it like several years, a couple decades later in a whole other country. You can see that sound in a new medium, but yeah, that distinct sound. Drew, what would be the themes and elements that stood out for you on this album?
Things that stood out for me, like Bill said, it's a dark album, yet it never fails to be sort of upbeat about itself. It has a very dark, dingy, grungy sort of feel to it, but yet there's always little silver linings here and there, which is really cool. The weird thing about this record to me was, like I said, I heard it on the fringes, I heard the radio and the bits and pieces, and I'm going to go into a little bit like I did with another one of our past Bad Rabbits, and I should have been listening to this for a while, and I haven't. So that was really cool. Like, this is a band that I knew I should have dove into. I'm here now. I enjoyed every bit of it. It was really well produced, really welcome. Like, the compositions of the songs are really well thought out. The album has a definite ebb and flow to it, which I really enjoy when bands think about, okay, where are we putting our songs on the record and how is it going to flow? And to me, it flowed very well. And her voice, there's something just at once almost scary good about her voice and haunting, but yet sexy to her voice. And that to me is awesome. Like, something about that is perfect.
I've always said she could look like Suzanne Boyle, and with that voice, she would still be probably one of the sexiest women on the planet.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, those would be kind of the themes and elements. Bill, I know you touched on it when we talked about themes and elements, but what were some of the key tracks to key in on this album?
I really focused mainly on the ones that kind of spoke to that narrative of them making the album. A few that came to mind were The Trick Is to Keep Breathing, Push It, I Think I'm Paranoid, and Medication. Let me back up and explain a couple of those. Medication, and it's very obvious when you're listening to it. Basically what was going on is she had a manager, and they had their first album, they'd had a ton of success and everything, and so they were touring like crazy, right? And she was freaking out about it. So he started slipping her, happy pills. And that's what basically the song Medication is about, and then even in I Think I'm Paranoid, she has that line, prop me up with another pill, which is also referencing the same kind of thing. But I really liked Medication because it really, if I don't know if any of you guys have ever taken like antidepressants, happy pills, whatever, and it was very much... But it's musically and lyrically, it kind of it goes through the cycle that you're on when you're on those kind of pills, to where, I'm trying to remember the exact line. Hold on, I have lyrics pulled up here. 1 second. Yeah, and let's see here. What was I looking for? Oh yeah, but there's like I doesn't have the exact lyric here. I think it's labeled as like a backing track or something. But like there's a very soft part of the song where she's kind of okay with it, and then it gets it's a soft song in general, but it gets a little harder and heavier, and she starts talking about how angry she is about having to be on the pills, and then she takes another pill and it gets back and it's nice and it's soft and it's good, which I really really liked. And let's see here. One other that I think I should mention, if for the video, really, if nothing else, is Push It. For one, like we were saying, a very sensual song. Not just talking about, I don't know, pushing the pubic area together, but kind of pushing it and going out there physically in terms
Pushing
of
the
love
boundaries,
I'm sounding like such a dweeb when I'm talking about it, yeah. but but the video was really, really cool at the time too. It had a little miniature guy with a light bulb head that was like her friend that she walked around with and stuff. And all the videos for this album were really kind of creative and cool and innovative and a little like indie film, which kind of and gritty, that word again. But I'm trying to think, and I mean, you can really extrapolate from all the songs kind of what she was going through at the time. But like I said, if I had to pick some top tracks from the song, Trick is to Keep Breathing, Push It, I think I'm Paranoid, and Medication for sure.
Yeah. Brett, what would be some of the key tracks that would stick out for you?
Well, along the same lines, coming off of the end of the heroin rock era, like you still had the dregs of that, and definitely still people that were doing it. It just was not the sound. I think I'm Paranoid and Push It are the two songs that I think they were both singles, but those are the songs that are very memorable, but they were memorable then because they did not sound like anything that was coming out at that time, like the Holes and the still making money off of Kurt Cobain and that stuff. The layering, the skill that they had with making it still be power chord rock, but be able to have like a drum beat put behind it, and have a little bit of synth in there. Those are really good examples. And I remember the Push It video as well. Also, as Bill said, a lot of pushing it in the pelvic region, cut it out, Dad, kind of thing. So let's talk about sex some more. But no, it was definitely at that time there were a lot of songs about the slow and painful descent into addiction. It's good to have a song about getting busy.
Yeah, getting busy.
One thing with Push It, if you don't mind, Petey, it's a very graphic song. Listening to it, I'm kind of shocked that I heard it on the radio in the small town in West Virginia I grew up in when I was a teenager. It's pretty graphic.
Yeah.
Pubic.
Yes.
Hand gestures.
Yeah. Patrick, what would be some of the tracks that stood out for you?
I will agree with Bill on the Trick is to Keep Breathing. I think that's a better electropop song than almost anything going today. And had it not been released in 1998, you could release it today and probably put some heavier bass underneath it, and people would listen to it because it's just really good. It still sounds relatively fresh, 20 some years on. I think I'm Paranoid I liked for a weird reason, and that's because on that song, Shirley Manson's voice reminds me of Amanda Palmer, who I'm a big fan of, or really, I guess Amanda Palmer reminds me of Shirley Manson because came after, but there's a similarity in their range, and that song sounds like an Amanda Palmer kind of song, and I liked that. I like Dumb a lot because it sounds like a Prodigy song. It was like that really gritty, dancey, really hard beat kind of thing, but still kind of heavy. And that one to me is like the song I want to be in the middle of a crowd at a concert for, because I think it'd be a blast.
Yeah. Some fantastic tracks. Drew, what would be some of the tracks that stood out for you?
Well, one of the ones that stood out for me on this one was, as I said before, I've heard a lot of them, and the single that I always remembered was Special. And to me, it was a single for a good reason. It was very memorable, very sing-alongy. I had a lot of fun with that one. When I grow up, I have a soft spot in my heart for music that the lyrics will say one thing to you and its music will say another. The music was very catchy, very dancey, very like sort of hooky, yet the lyrics were very, 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 very dark in that one.
Classic lyrical dissonance.
Right. It's the reason I love Real Big Fish. Because all of their songs are that way. But, that song to me really stood out for that. And then, I found out Sexy Creepy was a thing with Sleep Together. So that was a thing that I discovered on this record. Something about Sleep Together to me was like, it felt seedy and it felt dirty the whole way through from lyrics to music, and that to me was really, really a lot of fun. I say fun, and even me saying fun makes me sound weird, and I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
So.
I mean, your mustache already told everybody that from the get-go.
Fair enough.
It's like a big billboard on your upper lip.
Yeah, and yeah, some fantastic tracks that y'all keyed in on, and you know the tracks everyone knows, like I think a Paranoid, Push It, you know, Special. Those are some fantastic tracks. Let's go back around the horn, to get some conclusive thoughts. Brett, what would be your conclusion on the album as a whole overall?
It's an album pulled out of a period in time. You should listen to it, and when you listen to it, you should go and listen to everything else that was being played on major markets on radio and on MTV at that period, and see the contrast. And you know, this is not your Smashing Pumpkins. This is not your Nirvana. This is not your Sonic Youth. This is not Super Unknown. That was still being marketed pretty heavily. This is an album that was sort of pivoting people into a different direction. I'm sad to say a couple years after that, nu metal became a thing. But in a perfect world, there would be more things like this.
We're all sad that a couple years after this,
pivoting like a TechCrunch panel. Patrick, what would be your thoughts on the album overall?
I think it's you know, not exactly a new album, and it still sounds relatively fresh today. I mean, it sounds familiar to anyone, you know, in their late 20s or early 30s, because we heard it. I mean, we were, you know, teenagers and it was out and whatnot. But even today, like it's still a really interesting mix of electronic stuff with rock music, which happens frequently now, but you know, in 1998 it was still kind of a relatively new idea, and I think this works. And I could make some really like annoying quips at some of the drum sounds. The electronic drums on this are awful because they sound like they were made in 1998, and we live in a world where you don't have to sound like that anymore. But the composition's good, the songwriting's good. Shirley Manson's voice is friggin' amazing, I think is probably the only way to describe it, and it's kind of a good album.
Yeah, it's a pretty darn good album. Brett, what would be your thoughts, conclusively?
I gave them to you a couple seconds ago.
That would be Drew. Drew, sorry. I'm like going back and forth. Drew, what would be your thoughts about the album as a whole?
Great night of recording. Well, I'm gonna hit on something that I should have, or a theme that's going through all of my review. I should have gotten on this a long time ago. It's something that like,
a recurring theme that we'll see in the next couple of episodes.
Yeah, oddly enough. But it's something that like I very much enjoyed, and going back to it and knowing the singles that I knew, but then hearing again the depth that they had even past those singles, and sort of the range as a band that they have was really, really interesting to me. Really, really cool. This is one of those bands that I'm glad this show exists for me, because I don't know if I would have sought them out nowadays. just because it was like, oh yeah, that band Garbage, I sort of know them. Like, that's fine. I will know them how I know them. But now that I listen to them again, I'm probably going to end up putting a playlist together of like 90s alt rock, because that includes all of their albums and like a bunch of other like happy, poppy, weird stuff like this. And that's just going to be my night after this episode. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something we remember and enjoyed. Bill, your last word. What would be your thoughts about the album as a whole? Your conclusion.
Hated it. No, I'm kidding. No, it was. I can't think or talk about this album without like mentioning how I found it. Like, basically, I was a 14-year-old. A week before, someone had given me a cassette tape with Pink Floyd's The Wall on it, and I'd gotten my first music buzz. So I got some cash, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go buy a CD. And so I go. I'm walking up and down the aisles. I see the cool kind of like orange bubbly cover there. And I see version 2.0 on it. I noticed the band's name is Garbage, but the version 2.0 is what jumps out at Computer Nerd Bill, right?
Yeah. And
I take it home, and this was the album. I sat there for, 2 or 3 hours a night, like going through the liner notes, reading like, who did the craft services or whatever, down to that, analyzing the lyrics, everything. So, I mean, it's really hard for me to distance myself from where it came from, but it's a great album, really strong lyrically, really strong musically. I still listen to it every week. This is my go-to if I'm trying to do, like, if I'm writing and I'm trying to do a creepy scene, I throw on like 3 or 4 tracks from this and some Tool tracks. And so, I still listen to tracks from this album every week. And as everyone said before, Shirley Manson is amazing. Her voice is amazing. She's incredibly sexy. She's still got it. I was watching some stuff with her on Craig Ferguson a couple weeks back, and she's still got it. But overall, it was my first album, more or less, the first album I chose. And I don't think I can end this sentence any other way besides saying I completely love it still.
Yes. Definitely.
Always remember your firsts.
Exactly. And my first was Shirley Manson. You're here.
Mm-hmm.
But what was the store that you purchased your CD at?
It was I think it was a Sam Goody. I'm pretty sure. At the mall.
The Halcyon Days.
Yeah,
it's the Ohio Valley Mall.
Days of Sam Goody. Of course, now we get to our main event of the evening. We have our haiku reviews. It's gonna be interesting to see. Let's start with Brett. What is your haiku?
90s rock and synth with a striking leading gal, pivot of genre.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, what is your haiku?
Shirley Manson's voice. It still sounds fucking awesome. Trip back to my youth.
Nice. Drew, what is your haiku?
Solid alt rock tunes that I should have heard before. Thanks for coming, Bill.
Nice. And for mine, grunge pop icons that defined a memorable sound of a time and place. Bill, last but not least, what is your haiku?
Okay, first off, you're welcome, Drew. Secondly, sexy dirty grit, adolescent fantasy, marry me Manson.
Nice.
Had to get that out there, Shirley. If you're out there, I have a wife and 3 kids. I'm open to it. Just saying.
You said marry me Manson. I swear Brian Warner was going to turn the corner. I'm like, I didn't mean you, dude.
I'm actually talking about Charles Manson.
Yes.
He's just dreamy.
He's
those
dreamy.
eyes?
And then that swastika.
I was going to say. That forehead, though.
That forehead. Yeah, of course. The haikus and the fun, and that was a fantastic album. I think we all agreed on the fantasticness of it. Of course, if you all want to play along, this album is available on our playlist on Beats Music. Spotify. Let us know anywhere else that you want us to curate a playlist for you, and we will do just that. Next on that playlist, on those playlists or whatever they are, is going to be my album. My album next week, and my album is none other than Jaorim. We're going back to Daehanminguk, otherwise known as Republic of Korea, with a fantastic veteran group that started around the time this album came out, Jaorim. So it's going to be interesting to hear our discussions about that album. But Bill, thank you very much for coming on this on this little dumb podcast. You have far better podcasts under your repertoire. I know you got Greetings from Storybrooke. You guys are covering some casting news. What's going on over there?
Greetings from Storybrooke. We cover Once Upon a Time on ABC, and they're bringing the Frozen characters into the fold next season. So. Most of the summer, we're probably just going to be watching Frozen and geeking out about it. Yeah. But we're also starting up over the summer a podcast devoted to the new show coming on Fox, set in the Batman universe called Gotham, and that's Legends of Gotham. And over the summer, since my co-host Anne Marie doesn't have a great background on Batman, we're going to be taking her through some of the classic stories like Year One, Dark Knight Returns, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So that should be a lot of fun. You can check that out at legendsofgotham.com, and you can check Greetings from Storybrooke out at greetingsfromstorybrooke.com, or just search for it on iTunes or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you can follow Bill at Bill Meeks on Twitter, and you can look up his stuff, his videos. Fantastic, talented dude, far better than any of us. And I think we can all agree. Of course, you can.
You embarrass me. Also, you're right.
You can follow us all over the internet. Brett, Pat. Let's go the right order. Patrick is at Swagger. Brett is at Hibbity HIBBITYBIBBARD. Drew is at XDruciferX. I am at PD Rave. Bill is still at Bill Meeks. The show is at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4. Record Breakers, recordbreakerspodcast.com, recordbreakerspodcast@gmail.com, rebelli.net, iTunes, Stitcher, subscribe, share, like, give us reviews, and that's about it. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Doodles.
Bye.